No genre of film gets anywhere even close to horror when it comes to the sheer number of remakes, reboots, reimaginings, or reconfigurations. Some of those are clearly great, some of those, not so much. And while plenty of remakes follow the exact same formula as their predecessors, some at least try to do something different. And in the case of this video, that different revolves around characters who died in the original film, but then who managed to fare far better in the do-over. So with that in mind, I'm Andrew from What Culture Horror, and here are 10 horror movie characters who died but survived the remake. Number 10. Annie Brackett, Halloween. With a dry sense of sarcasm to whatever she's doing, Nancy Loomis's Annie Brackett brings a great energy to John Carpenter's Halloween. Like her pal Linda though, Annie is one of those who ends up dead courtesy of Michael Myers on the night he came home. Attacked in a car, strangled, and then Annie's throat slit. For better or worse, Rob Zombie very much made Halloween his own with his 2007 remake. And one major difference between that film and the original 1978 picture is the fate of Danielle Harris's Annie Brackett. While she is attacked by Michael Myers, this Annie manages to just about survive that assault, although Michael would obviously return to finish the job in brutal fashion in Zombies Halloween 2. Number 9. Gage Creed, Pet Sematary. Mary Lambert's 1989 adaptation of Stephen King's Pet Sematary is brimming with charm, with obvious praise for the ever-great Fred Gwynne, of course, and it very much follows the same path as King's 1983 novel. Of course, that path involves the tragic early death of young Gage Creed, which sets in motion so much of the film, as after learning of a nearby cemetery that can bring things back from the dead, Creed patriarch Lewis uses that land to reanimate his son, only for Gage to be resurrected with a new murderous edge to him. For the 2019 Pet Sematary remake, that actually spares the youngest Creed child, as instead of Gage, that redo opts to kill off Gage's older sister Ellie, with her then brought back to life. Number 8. Glenn Lutz, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Sure, Glenn Lutz might not technically be in the 2010 Elm Street, but he's in that remake in all but name. In Wes Craven's 1984 original, Glenn is the boyfriend of Nancy Thompson and has one of the most memorable deaths in the entire franchise, being pulled into his bed while a pool of blood spurts magically up to the ceiling. While he's not named Glenn, Kyle Gallner's Quentin Smith is every inch that same character in the remake. And when Quentin's crush on Nancy becomes clear, audiences initially feared the worst for him, hoping that maybe we'll see something as gnarly as Glenn's 1984 death. However, Quentin does something Glenn couldn't, managing to somehow survive the murder spree of Jackie Earle Haley's Freddy Krueger. Number 7. Barbara, Night of the Living Dead. When her asshat brother Johnny ends up dead in the iconic opening sequence of George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead, Barbara flees for safety, taking shelter in a nearby farmhouse alongside Ben, Harry, and a few other faces. By the time all is said and done though, everybody ends up dead, with the famed ending of Night of the Living Dead seeing sole survivor Ben mistaken for a ghoul and then shot dead. When Romero wrote the Tom Savini directed 1990 version of Night of the Living Dead, the meat of that redo followed a similar route to the original, but one big difference was the fate of Patricia Tallman's Barbara, who survives the movie having decided to leave the farmhouse in search of help, and that was a very, very smart plan. Number 6. Norma Watson, Carrie. Played by genre fave PJ Souls, Norma Watson, or Brian De Palma's Carrie, is a ruthless bully who's forever looking for new ways to torment her classmates. In particular, that would be Carrie White, who gets most of that torment. Tied at the hip with fellow bully Chris Hargensen, Norma was pivotal in pulling off the final act prank that left Carrie covered in pig's blood and sent her into a telekinetic rampage. Like Chris and pretty much anyone not named Sue Snell, Norma is one of the many left dead after Carrie finally snaps. For the 2002 Carrie TV movie though, Norma was a vastly different character, and had a vastly different fate as a result of that. Played by Megan Black, this Norma is the senior class president, and generally a positive, friendly presence, who's actually rather sympathetic towards Carrie. For the final act massacre, Norma survives thanks to finding a well-placed vent, although the character would then be completely absent from the 2013 Chloe Grace Moretz Carrie remake. Number 5. Mercury, The Hills Have Eyes. To some, the real hero of The Hills Have Eyes, both the original and the remake, is Beast, the German shepherd pet of the Carter family. Having seen several people killed by the mutants of the movie, Beast, quite frankly, has had enough and plays a major role in taking down Papa Jupiter and his twisted clan. In Wes Craven's 1977 film, one such mutant who Beast takes out is Mercury. There, Beast jumps at this childlike Mercury and knocks him off a cliff. And while Beast once again helps take out the mutant in Alexander Ayer's 2006 remake, Mercury isn't one of his targets. In that redo, Mercury is an actual child rather than just having the mind of a child. And despite the seriously messed up antics of that remake, even that film doesn't go as far as killing a kid, meaning Mercury is one of those who survives the 2006 Hills Have Eyes. Number 4. Alice Hardy, Friday the 13th. Played by Adrienne King, Alice Hardy is famously the final girl of the original Friday the 13th, and she's also the first person we see killed by Jason Voorhees, with Jason offing Alice in the opening minutes of Friday the 13th Part 2. For the timeline of the 2009 Friday the 13th remake though, Alice is seemingly still alive, or at least we don't see her die. The remake gives a flashback of Alice beheading Pamela Voorhees, but unlike Part 2, we don't see Jason get any brutal revenge on his mother's killer. Granted, it might be speculative thinking, but you have to think that if Jason did kill Alice in the remake's timeline, that would have been shown here. So, chances are, Alice Hardy is still out there in the world of Marcus Nispel's reboot. Number 3. The Mandrakis Children, When a Stranger Calls. Developing the opening scene of the 1979 film into a full feature, Simon West's 2006 When a Stranger Calls is a very, very solid slow burn horror. Here we have 80 minutes of Jill Johnson babysitting the Mandrakis children, all out in the middle of nowhere, and all as she gets creepy phone calls, and it soon becomes clear someone else is in that house. By the end of the remake, that unnamed intruder is apprehended by the police, with Jill and the kids clearly shaken, but more importantly, they're actually very much alive still. Back in Fred Walton's 1979 movie though, the film opens with the intruder, who is actually an old sea dog named Kurt Duncan, actually murdering the Mandrakis kids, before the film jumps ahead 7 years as Duncan escapes a psychiatric unit and stalks Jill's own children. Number 2. Lucie Jurin, Martyrs. For the 2008 Martyrs, Anna is largely the main focus of the picture, with Lucie taking her own life early on as the film establishes its premise and stakes. For the 2015 remake though, not only does Lucie not commit suicide, she actually ends up becoming the lead character. Plot-wise, both movies center on 2 young women who become best friends in an orphanage, with the adult Lucie then taking Anna to the home of a family who abused Lucie when she was younger, where she then kills the entire family. Rather than killing herself after this massacre, Lucie in the remake takes over so much of the Anna-driven parts of the original film, being made into a martyr, as in tortured and skinned in an attempt to be pushed as close to death as possible and to see a glimpse of the afterlife. By the end of the remake, the fate of Lucie and Anna is left a little ambiguous, but we for sure don't see either of them killed. And even if Lucie did die, she at least lasted a whole lot longer than her 2008 counterpart. Number 1. Mary Collingwood, The Last House on the Left. Another Wes Craven movie here because, hey, it's Wes Craven, a master of his craft. And in Wes Craven's brutal Last House on the Left, that opens with young Mary and Phyllis kidnapped and tortured by a group of escaped criminals led by Krug Stillo. After the girls are eventually both killed, Krug and his crew end up being taken in and locked after by Mary's clueless parents. And when the penny eventually does drop for the parents of what happened to their daughter and her friend, they take their own grim form of revenge against these villains. In the Last House remake though, things are slightly changed up, as the barely alive Mary, as played by the brilliant Sarah Paxton, resurfaces at the film's end to help her parents put down Krug. One other change from the original, of course, is Junior, who's renamed as Justin here, is another who survives, sailing off to safety with Mary and her parents.